Welcome to See You at USC. I'm your Friday night host, Mackie Kravitz. And tonight we have a film and TV composer, Megan Cavallari, joining us. You don't want to miss it. It's going to be a great episode. Stay tuned. Welcome back to See You at USC. I am joined by Megan Cavallari. Thank you so much for coming out here tonight.
Thanks for having me.
So I want to start. You're a film and TV composer. So let's start at the beginning. What drew you to music?
Well, I always loved music, and in the second grade, Miss Mangini went around the classroom. We were all sitting sort of cross-legged in a circle, and everybody said what they wanted to be when they grew up, and all the girls said a mommy, and all the boys said rich or fireman. And I said Leonard Bernstein, and everybody started laughing at me, so I stood up and I was really mad, and I walked out of the classroom and I walked through the doors and I went home to my mom. We were close to the school, and I told her, and she said, yeah, that's a good idea. So I knew I was going to be doing something with music really early on, and then I just, fulfilled my dream, the prophecy of becoming a composer like Leonard Bernstein.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Not a lot of people can say that. That's an incredible story.
Thank you.
So what drew you to Leonard Bernstein when you were younger?
My parents always had excellent taste in music, and they had the PBS specials around that he used to always lecture on PBS, and they were always taking me to see things like West Side Story and the Philadelphia Orchestra. I'm from Philly, so I saw him conduct. He was just magical when he conducted, and he always turned and talked to the audience, and so it was very personal. So I always looked up to him, because many conductors they just conduct the orchestra, and I conduct all my scores. I conduct, so he created a rapport with the audience, and so I really connected with him, and his music really connected with me. So I wanted to be a composer, I wanted to be a conductor, and I'm going to follow him. And then when I got to LA, I went to one scoring session, and I decided I want to be a film composer. So I just called my parents and said, I'm going to be a film composer now, instead of being a musical theater composer, which I was in New York.
Oh, okay.
And they said, okay, and that's what I did. So,
wow.
Yeah.
So you grew up in Philly. Did you go to school for music out there?
Yes. When I was a teenager, I began studies with Dr. Alfred Blatter Curtis Institute when I was a teenager. And then I wanted to write opera. So he told me about George Crumb, who's at University of Pennsylvania. So I got to sit in on some of his classes. And he is one of the world-renowned opera composers. And fast forward, I'm writing an opera right now.
Wow.
So that's going to debut in the spring, about Arita Sendler, and she's a woman who rescued 2,500 babies and children from the Jewish ghetto, and Warsaw Ghetto in Nazi Poland. So it's interesting how things go full circle.
Well, exactly.
So from there, from Philly, I went to NYU and studied composition for musical theater, and had a musical come out here to the Taper. And when I was at the Taper, everything just started to just happen, just go into film scoring.
So you've been bi-coastal. So when you went to NYU, were you fixated more on Broadway and musicals?
Yes.
And not so much on TV and film?
No, I always loved John Barry, and I love the melodies he created. But I wanted to be that musical theater writer and also write songs. And then my musical came out here, and then I just sort of changed, and I have a big animated feature musical coming out next year.
Congratulations.
So thank you. I'm writing the songs this year. And then next year I write the score, and it's called Jacob Marley, and Russ Francis is directing it. Wow. So yeah, so it's a big, huge musical, and I thank Richard Kraft from Kraft Engel for getting me a big job and doing my deal, and so it's fantastic. I'm going to conduct at Capitol Records. It's my favorite place to conduct, and my favorite room. and my favorite group of musicians will be there. So it's like home. You find a spot that you like to conduct in, and a group of musicians you like to work with, and some engineers that you like. Hopefully it'll be Al Schmidt, but if it's not Al Schmidt, it'll be someone equally as great, because Capitol only has the best mixers.
Wow.
So that'll be for next year and the year after.
So you kind of mentioned building your team.
Yes.
So through the process, through all your education and all the experiences you've had, have you drawn certain people? Obviously Larry Bernstein was a role model.
Yeah.
What other kind of inspirations have you drawn from?
Well, I was very lucky early on when I came out here to meet Danny Elfman. And so my first job was working on Nightmare Before Christmas.
Very well-known movie.
So yeah, I sort of fell into working on like a really great movie with one of the best composers.
Yeah.
So I fell into a dream job, and I worked with him and learned how to film compose from him.
Directly?
Right, that was my first job.
Wow.
So I worked with him, and we created a rapport, and he was incredibly generous. And I learned from Richard Kraft, who's at Kraft Engel, and he taught me all about scoring films. And between the two of them, I really learned to score and write songs for film as well. So, which is a different craft. And Danny, I worked from him until Dolores Claiborne, and then I started working for a film composer, the late Jerry Goldsmith, we worked on a movie together, and then we worked on some scoring things together for concert series and things. And then I worked for a British composer named Ed Shearer, who was equally brilliant. So then I went out on my own, and I always wrote scores for the people in NYU, at NYU, and then they all came out here.
That's
so
funny.
I still write for them.
Well, because LA is this big film industry where
Right.
all the film composers, but you came from here. So what's the biggest difference between composing for musicals rather than film and TV?
That was a totally different process, I guess. Writing for a musical, you start with an outline and a story. It can be based on a book or an original idea or concept. And you pick the peak moments. Those will be where your songs are. So you sort of create it within. And film scoring is where they bring the film to you. You spot it with the director where you want the music to be. And then you come up with themes, and you go back and forth between the director until you find the score, the color, the themes, what you want.
Yeah, film scoring sounds super interesting.
Yeah.
So do you get the script directly and you read it through first by yourself and get a feel for the movie and what type of music? Can you take me through that process?
Yeah, I get a script first. I read the script, and I get an idea of the characters, and I circle like where I think the music will be. And sometimes I'll put like a Rolling Stones song here, which you're not going to get because it's like $750,000 or something, right? And you're like, oh great, I'm going to have to write Satisfaction like song here or something. I mean, I have a TV show coming up Saturday night, and on PBS called Road Rebellion, and it's a fabulous movie about teen cancer, and Hernan Barragan, the director, scored it with Baba O'Reilly, and at the end, and I was like, geez, I hope you get the rights to that song, because it's like, I was like, because how do you replicate Pete Townsend? How do you replicate, Roger Daltrey's, A's and B's, like he belts those notes out, and Keith Moon's drumming, and you can't, redo that song.
Yeah.
It's legend. So, but he was like, I don't really have the rights for that song. I'm like,
so what do you do
you get
in that situation?
Well, you sit there and pretend you're doing the ARP 2600, like, and you try and find that sound. And you have to come up with 3 chords that are like, byum, byum, byum. And you got to make sure it's like, okay, you count the tempo, okay, that's about 120. And, you figure out how that's going to be. Pete Townsend gave him the song.
Okay.
Because Pete Townsend supports teen cancer, and Roger Daltrey's producing the movie.
Wow.
So we lucked out.
Yeah.
So I didn't have to write it out.
Doesn't always happen.
So that was really good. So I was like, thank you, Pete, for giving him that song. Because I don't have to write the most classic rock song in history. But it doesn't always happen that way. In the beginning of it, he had a Roy Orbison song, and he didn't get the rights to that. So I wrote a song for that, and it ended up I ended up loving it more than the song he put in there.
Wow.
So that was really wonderful that he loved the song more than
That's
the song.
Such a humbling experience.
Yeah, so that was really wonderful, and he just thinks that song really fits the movie. So he's going to make that into a feature next. So maybe some of the music will come in, maybe that song will stay. We're going to talk about what he's going to want for a feature. Hopefully I'll be available, you know, I mean, hopefully I can move on with that movie. You know, I don't know, he doesn't know. He's in the state where he's, you know, getting a budget together and things like that, but he's just wonderful to work with, and he's an awesome director.
Awesome.
So yeah.
See, you work on so many platforms. I don't know how you keep up. It's like so much music, we're just all jumbled together.
It's fantastic. I have a great life.
Yeah, very fortunate. But how, when you're working on so many projects at a certain time, how do you stay consistent to the theme of the project and not kind of get sidetracked?
Oh, well, you have to make everything absolutely excellent. Being a film composer or writing or doing anything in the film industry, you find out that getting the work is the hardest work. So doing the work is easy.
Yeah.
That's your passion, that's your love. Getting the work is the hardest work. So it's always inspirational, and it's always has to be A+, and you have to always fulfill the director's wish. And the director's, you know, if you're directing a film, I'm sure it's got to be impossible because you have to have all the elements going. So that's, for me, the easy part. Although you have to collaborate and figure out a language because people don't speak music. So they're like, I don't know, it's not working. And you have to just keep writing and writing and writing until you find it. And so people are like, how do you do it? I'm like, that's not a problem. There's one composer on a movie. There can be 10 writers on a movie. There can be an AD, a bunch of ADs on a movie, and a director. There can be hundreds of actors on a movie. There's one composer. That is it. So if you think about those odds, if you're lucky enough to get a composing gig, you're really happy.
Yeah.
So.
And I'm sure the creative juices just start flowing from the get-go when you get signed.
Yeah, and I got a great team of USC graduates working for me, so.
Oh, tell me more about that.
Yeah, they're working for me right now. I'm sure they're still at my house. I hire guys from graduate program at USC, film scoring, and they become my assistants, and I mentor them as they work for me. And I love them, and they're always amazing, and they're always well trained, and they come out of USC scoring department. So if they made it through USC, I know they're fantastic, and they've been beaten up.
Yeah.
And so I'm sort of like I show them, I'm in between them becoming professional. I like to think of myself that way.
As a mentor.
Yeah, and all of them, 100% of them, all have gone on to TV and film. There's not one of them who hasn't made it into the industry.
Wow.
And hasn't been completely professional. My last assistant has 3 TV gigs right now. My last one, who just left in August.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, so I have a really good track record. And he just emailed me and said, "You're my mentor." I'm like, I can't believe you have time to write me. You have more work than me right now.
Oh my goodness. I love how you are so involved in the USC community.
Yeah, I love them. I love them. They you know, I feel like, you know, I'm a nice hockey player and they have my back. So I love all of them. They work their tail off. And they're at my house right now trying to figure out, they're replacing my recording studio. They're rewiring it. And I have a second studio in my house. So they're figuring out how to make that work and the other one. So
well, we're going to take a quick commercial break, but when we get back, I'd love to hear more about your process and how you compose music. So stay tuned.
Here's the story of a TV manager who had a team to help out with the station. Their There's HR, web, graphics, busy showrunners, and station operations. The TV manager needs a new assistant, and we welcome her along with a few more. There's programming, equipment, and promotions, and they have much in store. All the managers, we work together to make live TV the best it's ever been. We have many helpful students to assist us. That's the way we all became Trojan Vision. Trojan Vision, Trojan Vision. That's the way we became Trojan Vision.
Did you listen to the new Kanye album?
Yeah, but it wasn't very good.
It's revolutionary to hip hop. It's amazing.
Are you serious? It's totally unoriginal and unintelligent.
How is it unoriginal and unintelligent? There are 30 samples.
Welcome back to See You at USC. Tonight we are with Megan Cavallari, who is a film and TV composer, and she's going to share more information with us about composing underscores and the film industry and more insight on that. So
I thought I'd give you an example.
yes.
So I thought I'd give you an obvious one. First, you're watching a woman, she's treading water,
Okay.
and you see a shark.
Sounds familiar.
Yes. And so you know she's just treading water, and she's sort of, she doesn't know what's going on, but you're seeing a big shark. So what happens in your body?
You tense up.
Right.
You get
And
scared.
what happens to your heart?
Oh, definitely. Starts
Speeds up.
beating, Yeah.
So, and the shark, is it above the water or below the water? It's below the water.
Okay.
So John Williams, the genius, the god of film composing, and he has the lowness of the water, and he doesn't have a big, huge sound, because the water, if you think of water and the ocean, it's not a huge sound. So he has a low sound, and it starts slow, and it scares you. And then he starts building it faster and faster and faster and faster and faster, and it's going higher and higher and higher.
Dun,
and
dun,
you're, and
dun,
you're
dun.
right, and your heart
Dun,
rate's
dun,
like
dun,
going,
dun, dun, dun.
oh my God, this woman. And so you almost become that woman. So like, I mean, you watch that show and you can't go in the water. You know, you can't go to the
Oh,
beach. You
God,
know, you're
no.
you're like, wait a minute, is there a shark around here? Like, you're just like terrified of the water. And if you watched that scene without that music, you might think it was sort of funny.
Kind of cheesy,
Yeah, but with the music and with that, the Spielberg Williams collaboration, and the fact that Spielberg just totally trusts Williams so much to come up with the character of the film music is an actual character. Come up with that and trust him so much. It's like the Tim Burton Danny Elfman relationship. When a director just trusts your composer, and it's a great feeling as a composer to have that trust.
Yeah.
To do the thing that the composer wants to do and take that risk, then the composer can go all out. So that will scare the crap out of you every time you see it. And it doesn't matter if you see it 10 times.
Yeah.
Your heart will still race. Your heart will still race when Bernard Herrmann is, his score is in the, gently like in the shower, and you go,
Yeah, exactly. Psycho.
Oh, she's driving to the, she just robbed the bank, and you don't know anything about her, but you know something bad. There's something bad going on, and something bad is going to happen, because Bernard Herrmann is the subtext. He composed like the subtext, what's going on in their head, and she's looking behind, and she's trouble. Something bad's going to happen to her. So sometimes you score the subtext, sometimes you score, in John Williams' case, he's scoring the action. Sometimes it's subtext, sometimes it's action, and sometimes it's opposite. Like in Morricone, there's a beautiful scene in The Mission, and it's what we call scoring the opposite. And it's a scene where all the Native Americans are being slaughtered, and Jeremy Irons is a priest, and he sides with the Native Americans, and the Spanish come in and they kill all the Native Americans. It's a very moving piece. And Morricone, instead of making it action music and going and making it bigger, he does this beautiful thing. He plays the opposite, and he makes it a mass. So you hear a child's choir singing this beautiful slow mass. So he's playing the opposite of what's going on, and it's chilling. So when you see that film, you don't know what's going on, and it's like partially in slow motion. You see all these Native Americans, you know, being butchered, and Jeremy Irons is, you know, going to be killed as well. But Morricone's playing the opposite. So those are all choices that a composer made, and somehow convinced the director
Wow.
to do, and it's risky.
Yeah.
Because Morricone could have scored the action, but instead he took it in a totally different direction and scored sort of the mass that these natives would be having after they died. So it's so shocking. The music is so shocking that it's brilliant.
Well, it evokes an emotion within the viewer.
Huge. Yeah, it's a huge emotion.
Which is a huge component of film.
Right.
So as a composer, when you read a script, how do you like translate that in your emotions and through your music?
Well, you read the script, and you never know what it's going to be when you see the picture.
Do you compose before you see the picture or after?
No, I compose when picture's locked.
Okay.
But it's not always locked.
You know, there's always reshoots.
You really want it locked. Because sometimes people are like, can you compose this thing? And you're like, do you have picture locked? Because even taking a minute out for composer is crazy. Like, or taking 20 seconds out, because the directors fall in love with your theme, and now there's like even 5 seconds out. That's like your theme is gone.
Yeah.
You know, even a couple frames out, sometimes you have to speed the theme up, and it doesn't work in that tempo.
Yeah, music's very, very like
it has
touchy.
to be exact.
Yeah.
So you want it to be locked, and you have to see like the chemistry of the actors. You have to see how they read the lines, because it's very different. You have to see like the sort of mise en scène. You have to see what it looks like, what it feels, the pauses they're taking. You don't want to be like putting your music over dialogue, you know, and things like that. And you want to also see the actors like subtext, how they're looking at each other, what they're doing. And you also want to talk to the director. You want to see what his or her, what they want. Do they want it music heavy? Do they want it sort of subtle? Do they want it, here's the point that they're making. This is the rise they want. They want a tear here. They want people to cry here. You know, so that's
Are these the type of notes that you get when you're composing?
Yeah, you go and you spot the film, and they say music here, music here, music here, and you might have your own ideas like, what about music here? They might go, no. Or they might go, maybe, I'll try it. And you never know. And you try and get as much information from them, like, what kind of music you think? Or, yeah, I can see it there. And sometimes you're going to go sing, like, would you like something like, and they're like, no. Or, you know, or they're like, yeah. I've been fortunate to work for a lot of directors, 9, 10 years. I mean, I've like 3 or 4 shows, or maybe 10 features. So we already have a language. So they already know. I've worked for a lot of directors who've won Emmys.
Wow.
And so I'm on their team. So they just call me because they associate me with their Emmys.
And you gain a trust with the people you work with. You build a network.
Yeah, and I know that their editors are going to be like, oh, I know this editor. You know, your editor's like crucial. Like if my editor's really musical and really edits really well,
to
I'm
the
like,
beat.
I'm so happy. If I have this really creative editor, I'm like, whoa, man. You know, so, but everybody usually is such top level that you're working with that it's usually pretty awesome the way everything goes.
It's nice to hear.
So, yeah. So when you work at a certain level, everything just sort of gels together.
You spoke briefly about a motion picture and a TV show you have coming up.
Yes, I have a TV show on the Saturday on PBS. It's after the Hugh the Hugh has a documentary, and Roger Daltrey produced this movie, and it's called Road Rebellion, and it's on PBS on Saturday. And I have an animated feature called Jacob Marley coming up, and that'll be next year, 2017.
Okay. So the PBS TV show, how is that different from composing a feature film or the movie that you're doing next year?
Well, the movie I'm doing next year's animated
Okay.
feature. So I'll be doing the songs this year with the director because he likes to write songs. So we'll collaborate on the songs together. And he has ideas for the songs. So in his script, he has ideas. And so I'll come up with what's called a hook. That's the song title, something that people will remember.
Yeah.
You know, something like Falling Down the Rabbit Hole. Like, that's a good idea for a song title.
Something catchy.
Something really catchy. You know, really like, you're going to win the Oscar for this. You know, it's really, and you might want to start with the end title because that's going to be nominated for an Oscar. So you want to rewrite that like 37 times.
Wow.
You want to make sure that is like going to your agent and like you're getting feedback constantly from that song.
Revise and revise and revise.
Because you want a really big singer singing that song.
Yeah.
And so you'll work on that song to death. But what you're going to do is you're going to work on the songs first. This is an animated musical.
Okay.
You work on the songs first, you do all the demos, and it sounds really great. And then you go and you score it the next year when all the animation is in. So, and then you with the orchestra, you have the orchestra redo the songs because you did it in your studio, and so they play the songs and then they play the orchestra your score. And I'm using Capitol Records, it's my favorite place on earth, and I conduct there, and I've conducted all my scores there, just about all my scores there, and it's wonderful. And if I can get Al Schmidt, that would be great.
That would be great.
And it doesn't matter because any of people trained with Al are phenomenal at Capitol. And I have my orchestra, and they all love me, and they love me when I stand up there. There's always a bass player going, "It's a girl conductor." You know?
Well, there's not many of those.
No, it's a chick with a stick kind of thing. We like to call ourselves chicks with sticks.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, so there's some of us out here. I know some female composers like to be in the booth because they want to talk to the director. It doesn't mean they can't conduct. I feel like the music comes from a higher place, and that's how I compose, and it goes out. But when you hear it from the orchestra, there's something thrilling about it when you hear it back from me. So I like that feeling. And then I can get notes from the director, and you know, they can come out, and I have really great assistants, and they can go, he doesn't like the French horns. So I can say,
French horns.
So they're like, French horns, you know, or like there's like a clam. A clam means a bad note. That's a music term for really bad note.
Well, you are definitely not leaving this interview on a clam. This has been so interesting getting to know you and your work and all of that.
Well,
so
thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for coming. And be sure to tune in to See You at USC every weeknight at 6:30. Have a great weekend.